Review of the movie Boyhood, written and directed by Richard Linklater. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. So the premise is that we follow a 6-year-old boy all the way until he's 18 years old and goes to college as he navigates through life. And the peculiar thing about this movie is that it was filmed in real time, so to speak, meaning that they filmed the entire movie within the span of 12 years. They filmed a few scenes in the first year, and they came back the second year and filmed some more, and so on and so forth until they finished it, so that the actors would age along with their characters that they are portraying here. But that's not even the only thing that makes the movie good. In short, I simply like the fact that it is ultra realistic movie, meaning that the entirety of this film feels like it could have, and probably to some extent has happened to some person. Like there is a person in this world, especially in America, that had this exact childhood, had this exact upbringing, or very similar to it. In fact, it is so realistic that once I was watching this with the girl I used to know, I had no idea about this movie before I introduced her to it. And we couldn't watch it complete in just one run, so we watched it in two parts. And after the first half of the movie, or a bit more than the first half of the movie was over, she told me that she has absolutely no idea what is going to happen next. And it got me thinking. And it's basically the fact that it is so realistic, because just like in real life, life has lots of twists and turns, things that, even though somehow are all related to each other, okay, there's one action before the other, they're somehow connected, but there's a lot of twists and turns. And when you see a normal movie, well, they follow a very formulaic structure. There's movies that are quests, there's these characters, they have this life, then something happens to them where they're forced to go on a journey. Then they meet some people that become their friends. They start out as enemies, then they get together, fight the bad guys, they go home, and then there's a big wedding. That's like just one classic trope. But in Boyhood, it's just, you don't really have that. You have a kid, his parents are divorced, his dad does this, they do the other, they go on this, they get a stepfather. Stepfather turns out to not be such a cool dude. A lot of stuff happens, and in no part of it does it feel like forced, does it feel like things are done for shock value. Even though there are some pretty intense moments within this movie, like I said, it just feels so natural and so ultra realistic. Now, a movie doesn't have to be realistic for it to be good, but in this case, this is the epitome of a movie that is good, in part because of how realistic it actually is. In terms of like the actual movie, what goes on screen and stuff like that, well, the directing style, Richard Linklater has a very straightforward, he doesn't really move the camera that much. He's basically an invisible director. It's all about the characters and the characters within a setting. Okay, so that way it's very well directed, doesn't go overboard, keeps it pretty straightforward and down to earth, much like the plot. In terms of the acting, again, like I said, it's ultra realistic, so that means it's very good, it's very natural. Now, despite it being called Boyhood and the main character being a boy, there's a lot of emphasis on the sister and her life and how it is for her growing up too. Although all of it is through the lens of the protagonist, most of it, or practically all of it, is filmed on location, so that's also really good. I don't really have any criticisms. Maybe I can get nitpicky with some certain stuff that are kind of more like personal pet peeves. Like for some reason, usually when a character in a movie has a hobby, for some reason, it's always photography. At least in my experience, for some reason, that is very common. I guess because, filmmaking and photography and cinematography, they're connected. They kind of always inject that into it. But that's just a personal pet peeve of mine. Also, the mother goes through different boyfriends, or well, the protagonist goes through different stepfathers, and some of them, I feel like there's one of them that is kind of, as a character, is not really treated fairly. But again, that maybe adds to the realism of this thing here. Not everything is just like straightforward and fair in life. So despite it having been nominated for multiple awards, multiple Oscars back in 2015, it still seems kind of like underrated and to a certain point forgotten, at least from my perspective. But yeah, it's a really good one. You should check it out.